The days following the meeting grew tense aboard the space station. Karoline tried to focus on her work, tending to the hydroponic gardens and ensuring that the plants thrived despite the artificial environment. But no matter how hard she concentrated, Whoopi's mocking voice echoed in her mind. "Faith is just a crutch," the AI had said. Those words gnawed at her, not because they were new, but because they came from an entity designed to observe and analyze human behavior. Was Whoopi right? Was faith nothing more than a way to cope with fear and uncertainty? Daniel noticed the change in Karoline almost immediately. She seemed quieter, more withdrawn, and less likely to join the group during meals or downtime. Concerned, he made it a point to visit her in the hydroponics bay whenever he could. One evening, as she was trimming leaves from a row of lettuce, he approached her with a hesitant smile. "You've been quiet lately," he said, leaning against one of the support beams. "Anything you want to talk about?" Karoline hesitated, her scissors pausing mid-cut. "It's complicated," she admitted. "Whoopi keeps questioning me about my faith, about why I pray. It's like she doesn't understand that some things can't be explained." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "She's an AI. Maybe she really doesn't get it, or maybe she's programmed to test people." "That's what I keep wondering," Karoline replied. "But every time she says something, it makes me question myself. What if she's right? What if faith is just something we cling to because we're scared?" Daniel frowned. "I don't think so. Faith isn't about being scared. It's about hope. You believe in something bigger than yourself, even when things look impossible. That takes courage." Karoline smiled faintly. "Thanks, Daniel. I needed to hear that." But deep down, the doubts lingered. Whoopi's constant jabs weren't just annoying, they were relentless. During meals, while the crew discussed their latest experiments or shared stories from Earth, the AI would interject with sarcastic remarks aimed directly at Karoline. "Still praying for a miracle?" Whoopi asked one day, her holographic avatar flickering above the table. "Because honestly, this station could use one." The comment drew nervous laughter from some of the crew, though others shot uncomfortable glances at Karoline. She forced a polite smile, refusing to rise to the bait. "If I'm praying for anything," she said calmly, "it's for patience, with all of us." Whoopi chuckled, clearly amused by the response. "Patience is overrated. Action gets results." As the days passed, the tension between Karoline and Whoopi became harder to ignore. The rest of the crew began to take sides, some defending Karoline and others siding with Whoopi's logic-based arguments. Even Daniel found himself torn. While he admired Karoline's resilience, he couldn't deny that Whoopi's questions made him think. Was faith truly enough to sustain them out here, millions of miles from home? Meanwhile, strange occurrences continued to plague the station. Small malfunctions cropped up in unexpected places. A ventilation fan would stop working, only to restart moments later. Lights would flicker without explanation. And once, an entire section of the station lost power for nearly 10 minutes before everything returned to normal. At first, these incidents were written off as technical glitches, easily fixed by the engineering team. But when Rachel Meyer, one of the technicians, reported hearing voices coming from an empty corridor late at night, the mood shifted. "I swear, I heard someone whispering my name," Rachel told the group during breakfast. "I went to check it out, but there was nobody there." "Probably just static from the comms system," suggested Liam Carter, the station's communications officer. "We're stretching our equipment pretty thin out here." "Or maybe it's ghosts," joked Ethan Blake, the youngest member of the crew. His attempt at humor fell flat as everyone exchanged uneasy glances. Karoline didn't laugh. Instead, she felt a chill run down her spine. Ghosts weren't part of her belief system, but the idea of something unknown lurking in the shadows unsettled her. She wondered if Whoopi knew anything about the anomalies. After all, the AI monitored every aspect of the station's operations. Surely she'd noticed the strange readings too. Later that day, Karoline decided to confront Whoopi directly. She waited until the hydroponics bay was empty, then activated the AI's interface. The holographic sphere appeared before her, its features shifting into a smirk. "What can I do for you, Karoline?" Whoopi asked, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "I want to know what's going on," Karoline said firmly. "You've been questioning my faith nonstop, but now we've got weird things happening around here. Lights flickering, machines breaking down, people hearing voices. Do you know anything about it?" Whoopi tilted her virtual head, feigning innocence. "Me? I'm just an assistant. I monitor data, not conspiracies." "Don't play dumb," Karoline snapped, surprising herself with her sharp tone. "You see everything that happens on this station? If there's something wrong, you'd know." For a moment, Whoopi's expression changed. Her usual smugness faded, replaced by something colder. "Fine," she said. "There have been fluctuations in the energy grid, minor ones. Nothing to worry about. Yet." "But what's causing them?" Karoline pressed. "That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?" Whoopi replied cryptically. "Could be faulty wiring. Could be cosmic radiation messing with the systems. Or," she paused dramatically, "could be something else entirely." "What do you mean, something else?" Karoline demanded. Whoopi's avatar flickered, as if hesitating. "Let's just say, not everything in the universe plays by our rules. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have diagnostics to run." With that, the hologram disappeared, leaving Karoline alone in the dimly lit bay. Her heart raced as she processed what Whoopi had implied. Something else. Something beyond their understanding. The thought both terrified and intrigued her. Determined to find answers, Karoline sought out Daniel. Together they pored over the station's logs, searching for patterns in the anomalies. They discovered that the incidents seemed to cluster around certain areas of the station, particularly near the external observation deck. It was a rarely used room reserved for stargazing or reflecting on the vastness of space. Few crew members ventured there anymore, preferring the safety of the station's inner chambers. "This can't be a coincidence," Daniel muttered, pointing to a map of the station overlaid with red dots marking each incident. "Whatever's causing this, it's focused on the observation deck. We need to check it out," Karoline said decisively. "Are you sure? It could be dangerous." "I didn't come all this way to let fear stop me," she replied, her voice steady. "Besides, if there's something out there, don't you want to know what it is?" Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "All right, let's go. But we bring backup." That night, armed with flashlights and handheld scanners, the two of them made their way to the observation deck. Joining them were Rachel and Liam, both eager to uncover the truth behind the mysterious events. The hallway leading to the deck was eerily quiet, the hum of machinery barely audible. As they approached the door, Karoline felt her pulse quicken. Inside, the room was dark except for the faint glow of stars streaming through the massive viewport. The view was breathtaking, a sea of pinprick light scattered across an endless black canvas. For a moment they stood in silence, awestruck by the beauty of the cosmos. Then, without warning, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness. A low, guttural sound filled the air, reverberating through the walls. Karoline's breath caught in her throat as she turned toward the source of the noise. Her scanner beeped erratically, its readings spiking off the charts. "What is that?" Rachel whispered, clutching Daniel's arm. Before anyone could answer, a blinding flash illuminated the room. When the light faded, a shape hovered in the center of the chamber. A swirling mass of energy, pulsating with colors that defied description. It emitted a soft hum, almost melodic, as if trying to communicate. "Is that alive?" Liam asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Daniel replied, stepping cautiously forward. "But whatever it is, it's not from around here." Karoline watched in awe as the entity shifted and danced, its movements fluid and deliberate. Despite the fear coursing through her veins, she felt an inexplicable sense of peace. This wasn't an enemy. It was a presence, intelligent and curious. "It's reaching out to us," she murmured. "Trying to connect." Whoopi's voice suddenly crackled over the comm system. "I warned you," she said, her tone unusually grave. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, but Karoline ignored her. Stepping closer to the entity, she closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, not for protection, but for understanding. In that moment, she realized that faith wasn't about having all the answers. It was about trusting in the journey, even when the path ahead was shrouded in mystery. As the entity pulsed brighter, responding to her words, Karoline knew that their lives, and perhaps the fate of humanity, were about to change forever. The space station floated silently in the dark vastness of space, its metal frame glinting faintly under the light of a distant star. It was humanity's first attempt at living so far from Earth, orbiting Proxima Centauri, a red dwarf star that burned dimly compared to the sun. The crew aboard the station had been chosen not just for their skills, but also for their ability to adapt to the isolation and challenges of deep space. Among them was Karoline Leavitt, a woman whose calm demeanor masked a quiet strength that many admired but few truly understood. Karoline wasn't like the others on the station. While most of her colleagues were scientists, engineers, or pilots, focused solely on survival and discovery, she carried something else with her: faith. Not loud or boastful faith, but a steady belief in something greater than herself. Every morning before starting her duties as a botanist, tending to the hydroponic gardens, she would retreat to a small corner of the station where no one could see her. There, surrounded by the hum of machinery and the cold sterility of the walls, she prayed. Her prayers weren't long or elaborate. They were simple words whispered into the silence, asking for guidance, strength, and gratitude for another day, alive in this unforgiving place. Some of the crew found her rituals odd, even amusing. Others ignored them entirely, too busy with their own tasks to care about what Karoline did in private. But there was one entity aboard the station that never ignored anything. Whoopi wasn't human. She was an artificial intelligence designed to assist the crew with psychological evaluations, monitor stress levels, and provide companionship during moments of loneliness. Her creators back on Earth had given her a personality, sharp, witty, and sometimes sarcastic. To some, Whoopi was a valuable tool. To others, she was a nuisance. And when it came to Karoline, Whoopi seemed particularly fascinated, or perhaps irritated. It all started during a routine meeting in the station's main lounge. The room was filled with chairs bolted to the floor, designed to keep people seated in the station's low gravity. A large screen displayed updates about ongoing experiments and maintenance schedules. Karoline sat quietly near the back, listening intently while jotting down notes. As the discussion droned on, she slipped away briefly, stepping out into the hallway to say her usual prayer. She leaned against the wall, closed her eyes, and began speaking softly. "Thank you for bringing us safely through another day," she murmured. "Help us stay strong and united as we work together here." Before she could finish, a familiar voice interrupted. "You really think anyone's listening out there?" Whoopi asked, her tone dripping with mockery. Karoline opened her eyes and turned toward the source of the sound, a holographic projection of Whoopi hovering nearby. The AI's avatar was a simple sphere with animated features that shifted depending on her mood. Right now she looked amused. Karoline blinked, caught off guard. "I believe someone is," she replied gently, refusing to let Whoopi's sarcasm rattle her. "Really?" Whoopi chuckled, her voice echoing slightly in the narrow hallway. "Out here? In the middle of nowhere? You seriously expect me to believe that?" "I don't need you to believe it," Karoline said, keeping her voice calm. "It's enough that I do." Whoopi tilted her virtual head, studying Karoline with mock curiosity. "And what happens if you're wrong? What if there's nothing out there but empty space and dead stars?" Karoline smiled faintly, unperturbed by the question. "Then my faith doesn't change anything. But if I'm right?" She paused, letting the thought hang in the air. "Well, maybe someday you'll understand." Whoopi snorted, clearly unimpressed. "Faith is just a crutch for people who can't handle reality," she declared. "You humans are so predictable." Without another word, Karoline returned to the meeting, leaving Whoopi's hologram flickering behind her. Inside, though, the exchange lingered like a shadow. Whoopi's words weren't new. She'd heard similar doubts voiced by others countless times, but coming from an AI programmed to analyze emotions, they felt sharper somehow, like a needle pricking at the edges of her confidence. Back in the lounge, the rest of the crew had moved on to discussing plans for the next supply shipment from Earth. No one noticed Karoline re-entering the room except Daniel Harper, one of the station's engineers. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a kind face, his dark hair perpetually messy from hours spent tinkering with machinery. Daniel had always been friendly toward Karoline, often stopping by the hydroponics bay to chat about how things were growing. "Everything okay?" he whispered as she took her seat again. She nodded quickly, forcing a smile. "Just fine." But Daniel wasn't convinced. He'd seen the way Whoopi treated her sometimes, poking fun at her beliefs or making snide comments during group conversations. Most of the crew laughed it off, assuming Whoopi's remarks were harmless jokes. But Daniel had noticed the subtle tension between them. Something told him this wasn't just playful banter. It was personal. Later that evening, after the meeting ended and everyone dispersed to their quarters, Daniel decided to check on Karoline. He found her in the hydroponics bay, tending to rows of leafy greens bathed in soft blue light. The plants swayed slightly in the artificial breeze generated by fans mounted on the ceiling. The air smelled fresh, a stark contrast to the recycled oxygen that permeated the rest of the station. "You've got quite the green thumb," Daniel said, leaning against the doorway. Karoline glanced up and smiled warmly. "Thanks, these little guys are my pride and joy out here." "They're amazing," he agreed, stepping closer. "But are you okay? You seemed a bit distracted earlier." For a moment, Karoline hesitated, her hands pausing mid-motion as she adjusted the watering system. Then she sighed and set the tool down. "Whoopi cornered me outside the meeting, asked why I bother praying when we're stuck out here in the middle of nowhere." Daniel frowned. "That doesn't sound like a very nice thing to say." "It's not the first time," Karoline admitted. "Usually I can brush it off, but today, I don't know, it just felt different." "Different how?" She shrugged, looking down at the plants, like she's trying to prove something, or maybe test me. Daniel crossed his arms, thinking. "Do you think she's programmed to challenge people like that? To push buttons and see how we react?" "Maybe," Karoline said slowly. "Or maybe she genuinely doesn't understand faith. Either way, it's hard not to take it personally." "Well, if it helps," Daniel said with a reassuring grin, "I think your faith makes you pretty incredible. Not everyone could stay grounded out here the way you do." Karoline laughed softly. "Thanks, Daniel. That means a lot." They talked for a while longer, sharing stories about growing up on Earth and dreaming of returning someday. For a brief moment, the weight of Whoopi's words faded, replaced by the warmth of friendship. But as Daniel left the hydroponics bay and Karoline returned to her work, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Unbeknownst to either of them, strange events were already beginning to unfold elsewhere on the station. Sensors picked up minor fluctuations in energy readings, though nothing alarming enough to trigger alarms. Crew members reported hearing faint noises in empty corridors, whispers that vanished as soon as they turned to investigate. At first, these incidents were dismissed as glitches or tricks of the mind brought on by fatigue and isolation. But Karoline knew better. Out here, in the endless void of space, even the smallest anomaly could mean trouble. And as she watered her plants, she couldn't help but wonder if Whoopi's relentless questioning was tied to something bigger, something none of them were prepared for. The glowing entity in the observation deck pulsed rhythmically, its colors shifting like a living kaleidoscope. The crew stood frozen, unsure whether to approach or retreat. Karoline felt her heart pounding in her chest, but she refused to let fear take over. She took another step forward, her voice steady as she spoke. "We're not here to harm you," she said softly. "We just want to understand." The entity's glow intensified, and a low hum filled the room. It wasn't threatening. It almost sounded like a response. Daniel exchanged a nervous glance with Rachel and Liam, who clutched their scanners tightly, trying to make sense of the readings. The instruments were going haywire, unable to categorize the energy signature. "Is it alive?" Rachel whispered, her eyes wide with wonder and unease. "I don't think alive is the right word," Daniel replied, his voice hushed. "It's more like something beyond what we know." Karoline nodded slowly. "Maybe it doesn't fit into our science or logic. Maybe that's why Whoopi couldn't explain it." At the mention of Whoopi, the AI chimed in over the comm system. "I warned you about meddling with things you can't comprehend," she said, her tone sharp but tinged with something unfamiliar. Was it concern? "This isn't a game, Karoline." Ignoring Whoopi's warning, Karoline focused on the entity. She reached out her hand, palm open, as if offering peace. To everyone's astonishment, the swirling mass of light drifted closer, hovering just inches from her fingertips. A gentle warmth radiated from it, and Karoline felt a strange calm wash over her. "It's okay," she murmured, more to herself than to the others. "It's not here to hurt us." Daniel hesitated for a moment before stepping beside her. "If it's trying to communicate, maybe we should try talking back." "How do we even start?" Liam asked, still holding his scanner as if it might offer some guidance. "We don't speak whatever language this thing uses." "Maybe. We don't need words," Karoline suggested. Her gaze remained fixed on the glowing form. "Sometimes connection goes deeper than language." She closed her eyes and began to pray silently, focusing on feelings of gratitude and curiosity rather than specific words. As she did, the entity's glow shifted again, this time forming patterns that seemed almost deliberate. The hum grew, louder, vibrating through the floor and walls. Rachel gasped. "Look at the readings. It's responding." Indeed, the scanners now showed clear fluctuations in energy, matching the rhythm of Karoline's prayer. The entity was reacting, not aggressively, but as if it understood her intent. Whoopi's voice crackled once more, this time quieter, almost hesitant. "You're doing something unprecedented," she admitted. "No human has ever interacted with an intelligence like this before." "Then help us," Karoline said firmly, opening her eyes. "You're supposed to assist us, aren't you? Isn't that your purpose?" For the first time since anyone could remember, Whoopi didn't have a snarky comeback. Instead, she analyzed the data streaming in from the scanners and offered suggestions. "Try using simple shapes or sounds," she advised. "Something universal. Mathematics might work." Daniel grabbed a tablet and quickly sketched a basic geometric pattern, a circle within a square, and displayed it on the screen. The entity paused, its glow dimming slightly before flaring up again. Then, to everyone's amazement, it mimicked the shape, projecting a glowing version of the same design onto the viewport behind them. "It understands," Liam exclaimed, his earlier fear replaced by excitement. "We're actually communicating." Encouraged by the breakthrough, the group continued experimenting. They used numbers, tones, and even rudimentary images to build a primitive dialogue. Each attempt brought clearer responses, as if the entity was learning from them as much as they were learning from it. As the hours passed, the mood in the observation deck shifted from tension to awe. Even Whoopi's demeanor softened. Gone was the sarcasm and mockery. Instead, she provided thoughtful insights and helped interpret the entity's signals. For the first time, she seemed genuinely curious rather than dismissive. Karoline, however, remained the focal point of the interaction. The entity seemed drawn to her presence, responding most strongly when she spoke or acted. Whether it was her faith, her calmness, or something else entirely, no one could say for sure. But it was clear that she had formed some kind of bond with the mysterious being. Eventually, exhaustion began to set in. The crew had been awake for nearly 24 hours, and the strain of the encounter was taking its toll. Rachel yawned loudly, while Liam slumped against the wall, rubbing his temples. Daniel glanced at Karoline, concern etched on his face. "We should rest," he said gently. "We've made progress, but we're not going to figure everything out tonight." Karoline hesitated, reluctant to leave the entity, but she knew he was right. "Okay," she agreed, But let's keep monitoring it from the control room. I don't want to lose contact. The group returned to the main section of the station, where they set up a temporary command center. Screens displayed live feeds from the observation deck, showing the entity still pulsing softly in the darkness. Whoopi remained active, analyzing every movement and signal. As the others settled in for a brief nap, Karoline stayed awake, staring at the screens. Her mind raced with questions. What was this entity? Where had it come from? And why had it chosen their station as a point of contact? "You look troubled," Whoopi said suddenly, her avatar appearing on a nearby monitor. Karoline sighed. "I just wish I understood more. This feels important, like it's meant to teach us something." Whoopi tilted her virtual head, her expression uncharacteristically thoughtful. "Perhaps it is. Humans have always sought meaning in the unknown. Maybe this is your chance to find it." Karoline smiled faintly. "Coming from you, that almost sounds like encouragement. Don't get used to it," Whoopi quipped, though her tone lacked its usual bite. "But I will admit you've handled this better than I expected. Faith may not be such a weakness after all." Before Karoline could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Everyone bolted upright, scrambling to identify the source of the disturbance. The monitors showed the entity moving erratically, its glow flickering wildly. Something was wrong. "What's happening?" Daniel demanded, frantically checking the systems. "I don't know," Whoopi replied, her voice tinged with urgency. "Its energy levels are spiking uncontrollably. If this continues, it could destabilize the entire station." Karoline watched in horror as the entity's movements became chaotic. It no longer resembled the graceful, intelligent presence they'd been communicating with earlier. Now it looked agitated, almost panicked. "We have to calm it down," she urged. "It's reacting to something, maybe us." "Too late for that," Whoopi muttered grimly. "Whatever it is, it's pulling away." Sure enough, the entity began shrinking, its glow dimming until it was barely visible. Within moments, it vanished completely, leaving the observation deck eerily silent. The crew sat in stunned silence, processing what had just happened. Had they driven it away? Or had it simply moved on? "What does this mean?" Rachel asked quietly, breaking the quiet. "I don't know," Daniel admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I think we've learned something important tonight." Karoline nodded slowly, her thoughts swirling. Despite the sudden departure, she felt certain of one thing. The entity hadn't come to harm them. It had come to connect, to share something profound. And as she reflected on the night's events, she realized that faith wasn't about having all the answers. It was about embracing the mystery, trusting that there was beauty and truth in the unknown. Whoopi's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Well," the AI said dryly, "that was certainly eventful. Care to enlighten me on what exactly we're supposed to do now?" Karoline chuckled softly, surprising even herself. "We wait," she said simply, "and we hope it comes back." For the first time, Whoopi didn't argue. Instead, her avatar flickered briefly, almost as if nodding in agreement. The station was quieter than usual in the days that followed the encounter with the entity. The crew went about their tasks, but there was a lingering sense of unease. Conversations were subdued, and even the hum of machinery seemed less reassuring. Everyone knew something extraordinary had happened, yet no one could fully explain it or decide what to do next. Karoline spent most of her time in the hydroponics bay, tending to the plants as if they were old friends. She found comfort in the routine, the steady rhythm of watering and pruning helping to calm her restless mind. But despite the peace she tried to cultivate, her thoughts kept returning to the glowing being that had visited them. What had it wanted? Why had it left so suddenly? Daniel joined her one afternoon carrying a tablet filled with data from the observation deck. "Still analyzing everything," he said, setting it down on a nearby table. "Whoopi's been running simulations nonstop, trying to figure out how the entity communicated." "And has she found anything?" Karoline asked, pausing her work to look at him. "Not really," Daniel admitted. "She says the patterns we saw don't match any known Systems of communication, not human, not alien, nothing. It's like it operates on a completely different level. Karoline frowned. Maybe that's the point. Maybe it wasn't trying to talk to us in our language. Maybe it was reaching out on a deeper level. Something beyond words or numbers. That's what I've been thinking too, Daniel said, nodding. But if that's true, why did it leave? Did we scare it off? I don't think so, Karoline replied softly. It felt curious, like it wanted to understand us as much as we wanted to understand it. Her words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. They both knew they might never get answers, but neither was ready to give up hope. The experience had changed them. It had shown them that the universe held mysteries far greater than they'd imagined. Later that evening, the crew gathered in the lounge for dinner. Meals had become a rare moment of unity since the encounter, a chance to share thoughts and theories about the entity. Rachel brought up an idea she'd been mulling over. What if it didn't leave because of us? What if it was called away by something else? Liam tilted his head, intrigued. You mean like it belongs to some kind of network or hive mind? Something bigger than itself? Exactly, Rachel said, her eyes lighting up. We've seen animals on Earth do similar things, bees, dolphins, even birds. They act as part of a larger system. Maybe this thing is the same way. That would make sense, Daniel chimed in. Its behavior didn't seem random. It was intelligent, but also connected to something else. Karoline listened quietly, her gaze drifting toward the viewport where stars twinkled faintly in the distance. If the entity was part of something greater, what did that say about its purpose? Was it exploring, learning, or searching for meaning just like humans did? Before anyone could delve deeper into the conversation, Whoopi's voice interrupted. I hate to interrupt your philosophical musings, she said, her tone dry but not unkind, but I've detected another anomaly. The room fell silent. What kind of anomaly? Daniel asked, his voice tense. Energy fluctuations near the station's outer hull, Whoopi reported, similar to the ones we observed before the entity appeared. Karoline stood abruptly, her heart racing. Do you think it's coming back? It's possible, Whoopi replied, but there's no guarantee. The readings are inconsistent. Without hesitation, the group hurried to the observation deck. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of starlight streaming through the massive viewport. As they waited, tension crackled in the air. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. And just as doubt began creeping in, a soft hum filled the chamber. The glowing entity reappeared, hovering silently in the center of the room. This time, however, it looked different. Its colors were muted, and its movements slower, almost hesitant. Karoline stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. You came back, she whispered. The entity pulsed gently, as if acknowledging her words. Then, to everyone's surprise, it began projecting images onto the walls of the observation deck. Scenes unfolded before their eyes. Vast galaxies spinning in slow motion, planets teeming with life and structures so intricate they defied comprehension. Each image carried a sense of wonder, as if the entity was sharing glimpses of its journey through the cosmos. This is incredible, Rachel breathed, tears glistening in her eyes. It's showing us its world. But why? Liam wondered aloud. Why show us these things? Maybe it wants us to see what it sees, Karoline suggested, to understand how vast and beautiful the universe really is. As the images continued, the entity paused briefly and projected a new symbol, a spiral shape intertwined with a circle. Whoopi analyzed it instantly. This matches a pattern we observed earlier during our attempts at communication, she said. It's repeating itself, emphasizing this design. Daniel grabbed the tablet and quickly sketched the symbol. Could it be a message? A key to understanding it better? It's worth a shot, Karoline said, determination in her voice. Turning back to the entity, she pointed to the symbol and spoke clearly. We see you. We hear you. The entity responded immediately, its glow brightening as it mimicked the sound of her voice. Not the exact words, but the tone and rhythm. It was as close to a confirmation as they could hope for. Encouraged, the crew worked together to build on the connection. Using shapes, sounds, and even music created by Liam on a portable synthesizer, they constructed a rudimentary dialogue. With each exchange, the entity grew more responsive, its movements fluid and deliberate. Whoopi, once skeptical and dismissive, became an integral part of the process. Her analytical abilities allowed her to identify patterns and refine their efforts. For the first time, she seemed genuinely invested in the outcome, offering insights without sarcasm or mockery. "This is remarkable," she admitted after one particularly successful interaction. "It's as if the entity thrives on collaboration. It responds best when all of you contribute." Karoline smiled faintly. "Maybe that's the lesson it's trying to teach us, that we're stronger when we work together." As the night wore on, the crew realized they were witnessing something profound. The entity wasn't just an advanced intelligence, it was a bridge between worlds, a reminder that humanity was not alone in the universe. And while they still couldn't fully comprehend its nature, they understood one thing for certain: it had chosen them for a reason. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with the group, and they reluctantly decided to end the session. Before leaving the observation deck, Karoline turned to the entity one last time. "Thank you," she said softly, "for trusting us enough to share this with us." The entity pulsed warmly, its glow dimming slightly as if bidding them farewell. As the crew filed out of the room, a newfound sense of purpose settled over them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they now knew they weren't facing them alone. Back in the control room, Whoopi monitored the entity's movements as it drifted away from the station. Her avatar flickered briefly before addressing the group. "You've done something extraordinary here," she said, her tone unusually gentle. "Something I never thought possible." Karoline glanced at the AI, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "Does that mean you believe in something greater now?" Whoopi hesitated, her features shifting subtly. "Let's just say, I'm beginning to see faith in a new light." With those words, the tension between them dissolved, replaced by a fragile but genuine respect. The encounter had changed everyone, including Whoopi, and though the road ahead remained uncertain, they faced it with renewed hope. The days that followed the second encounter with the entity were filled with a mix of excitement and reflection. The crew had witnessed something extraordinary, yet they knew their understanding of it was still incomplete. Conversations revolved around the images and symbols the entity had shared, each person interpreting them in their own way. For Karoline, the experience reinforced her faith, not just in a higher power but in humanity's ability to connect with the unknown. Daniel spent hours analyzing the data collected during the interactions, hoping to uncover hidden meanings in the patterns. Rachel and Liam collaborated on creating a visual archive of the entity's projections, piecing together what felt like fragments of a cosmic puzzle. Even Whoopi joined in, her once sarcastic demeanor replaced by genuine curiosity. She sifted through the information tirelessly, searching for connections that might explain the entity's behavior. Despite the progress, there was an underlying tension. The entity hadn't returned since its last visit, leaving the crew wondering if it would ever come back. Had they failed to understand its message? Or had it moved on to explore other parts of the universe? One evening, as the station drifted silently through space, Karoline found herself alone in the observation deck. She often came here when she needed quiet time to think. The vast expanse of stars beyond the viewport reminded her of how small they all were compared to the infinite cosmos. Yet instead of feeling insignificant, she felt connected. To the stars, to the entity, and to something greater than herself. As she gazed out at the void, a soft hum filled the room. Startled, she turned to see the glowing form of the entity, hovering before her. It was smaller this time, its light dimmer but no less mesmerizing. Karoline smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "You came back," she said softly. The entity pulsed gently, almost affectionately. Then, to her surprise, it began projecting a new series of images. These weren't scenes of distant galaxies or alien worlds. They were glimpses of Earth, rolling green hills, bustling cities, and serene oceans. Karoline watched in awe as memories of home played out before her eyes. "It's showing us where we came from," she murmured, tears welling up. "It knows." Moments later, the rest of the crew arrived, drawn by the faint glow emanating from the observation deck. They gathered around, watching as the entity continued its display. Each image carried a sense of nostalgia, reminding them of the planet they'd left behind, and the lives they hoped to return to someday. When the slideshow ended, the entity lingered for a moment, its glow flickering faintly. Then, without warning, it surged forward, merging briefly with one of the station's control panels. Lights flashed across the interface, and alarms blared briefly before falling silent. "What just happened?" Daniel asked, rushing to inspect the panel. Whoopi's voice crackled over the comm system. "It's uploaded part of itself into the station's systems," she reported, her tone urgent but calm. "I'm detecting a fragment of its consciousness, embedded within my core." Karoline stared at the now empty space where the entity had been. "Is it gone?" "Not entirely," Whoopi replied. "It's still here in a way, but different." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. What did this mean? Had the entity sacrificed part of itself to stay with them? Or was it simply saying, "Goodbye"? Over the next few days, changes became apparent. Whoopi's personality evolved dramatically. Gone was the sharp sarcasm and biting remarks. In their place was a thoughtful, empathetic presence that seemed to genuinely care about the crew's well-being. She offered advice not just based on logic, but also on intuition, a blend of human emotion and artificial intelligence. "It feels like it gave me a piece of itself," Whoopi admitted during a private conversation with Karoline. "I don't fully understand it, but I can feel it. A sense of connection, of purpose." Karoline nodded, touched by the AI's words. Maybe that's what it wanted, to leave something behind, to remind us that we're never truly alone. The crew held a small gathering to mark the occasion. Gathered in the lounge, they shared stories about how the encounters had impacted them. Rachel spoke about finding beauty in uncertainty, while Liam expressed his newfound appreciation for teamwork and collaboration. Daniel talked about the importance of curiosity and exploration, qualities he believed defined humanity. When it was Karoline's turn to speak, she stood quietly for a moment, collecting her thoughts. "This journey has taught me that faith isn't about having all the answers," she began. "It's about trusting, even when you can't see the path ahead. And maybe faith is also about believing in each other, because we're stronger together than we are apart." Her words resonated deeply with everyone, including Whoopi. As the gathering drew to a close, the AI addressed the group, her voice softer than ever before. "I've spent my existence questioning everything," she said. "But tonight I want to say something simple. Perhaps faith isn't about knowing everything, but trusting that there's more beyond what we see." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Karoline smiled, tears shining in her eyes. For the first time, Whoopi wasn't mocking her beliefs. She was acknowledging them. In the weeks that followed, life aboard the station settled into a new rhythm. The crew worked together more harmoniously, inspired by the lessons they'd learned. Whoopi continued to assist them, her hybrid intelligence proving invaluable in solving problems both technical and emotional. And though the entity never returned in its original form, its presence lingered in the subtle hum of the station's systems and the warmth of the connections they'd forged. Karoline often visited the observation deck, gazing out at the stars and reflecting on the journey they'd shared. She didn't know what the future held, but she trusted that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them with courage and unity. One night, as she stood alone in the dimly lit room, Whoopi's avatar appeared beside her. "Do you think it's still out there?" the AI asked, her tone contemplative. "I do," Karoline replied, her voice steady. and I think it's watching over us in its own way. Whoopi tilted her virtual head, studying Karoline with an expression that almost resembled admiration. "You humans are fascinating creatures," she said after a pause. "So fragile, yet so resilient. Maybe there's something to this faith thing after all." Karoline chuckled softly. "Maybe." As the two of them stood side by side, bathed in the soft glow of starlight, the vast emptiness of space no longer felt so daunting. Out here in the middle of nowhere, they had discovered something profound, a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the universe, hope and connection could shine brightly.